What's up, beautiful people? Jeff here. We're picking up what we left off on the part 1 of our stage 4, which is the real work. We're getting into the details of adding effects, transition, overlays, and also implementing sound effects, which is my favorite part. And also we will have some polishing on our final product. And now, let's dive in.
So this one, we will adjust this. What we left here is this one. We will make this red. Make it here. Yeah, like that. Then we will add a blend tool. What could work here? Hard light. Move it into the power segment here. I mean, behind Stalin. I mean, behind Churchill. Should I? Or make this 60? Or nope. Darken. Holy fudge. Soft light. I think soft light is okay. Soft light. Here. Okay, Stalin.
But he never trusted Stalin.
But he never.
But he never trusted.
I think this is more dramatic on the face.
But he never trusted Stalin. He felt trusted Stalin. But he never trusted Stalin. He felt that Stalin was going to threaten.
For the next scene here, I think this is much dramatic to show from top and from bottom again. From top, from bottom.
Stalin was going to threaten. That Stalin was going to threaten. That Stalin was going to threaten Europe. Churchill asked the British chiefs
okay.
that Stalin was going to threaten Europe.
Zoom again. Fast zoom in, fast zoom out. Nope. Zoom in and zoom out soft for starting. Another one from the bottom.
That Stalin was going to threaten Europe. Churchill asked Stalin was going to threaten
Europe to threaten Europe. I think we need to download a Europe flag. This one is fine. Go to your folder, import it. Add depth, which is, we will copy this, copy the drop file, the drop shadow, and add a blend. What would work here?
was going to threaten Europe.
From bottom. Then add a take effect. Want is at Europe.
Stalin was going to threaten Europe.
Nope, I think take effect is corny. Just add a zone. Fast zoom in, fast zoom out, I can zoom out.
Was going to threaten Europe. Churchill asked the British.
And add a transition here for maybe rotate would work. Where's the sound effects? Oh, here.
Churchill asked the
So Churchill Stalin
felt that Stalin was going to threaten Europe. Churchill asked the British chief. Stalin was going to threaten Europe. Churchill asked the British.
from bottom.
Churchill asked the British Chiefs of Staff Committee to come up with. Churchill asked the British.
Again, we encountered a technical difficulties. Brace. It's brace for me. We can do this. All right. Again,
Churchill asked.
So
Churchill asked
Why is not loading?
Europe. Churchill asked
Again, close it. So we are in the part of we're number 22. So we have almost, we are near to finish this video. Okay.
Churchill asked the British Chiefs of Staff Committee to come up with a plan in the case of war with the.
Yeah, I think this could do.
Churchill asked the British Chiefs of Staff Committee.
Then Churchill will be more little here to show the it is on the meeting. And that is in and is out. And let's add each effect to him. And another zoom or zoom in and zoom out here for the backdrop.
Churchill asked the British Chiefs of Staff Committee to come up with a.
That's kind of fast. We'll make that slower.
Churchill asked the British Chiefs of Staff Committee to come up with a plan in the case of. And in the case
From add the effect here, zoom out, zoom out, and reverse that, and zoom
in the case of war with. In the case of.
from bottom, from top.
In the case of war with the Soviet Union.
Then flag of Soviet Union. This one. Make this at the top. Or linear white here. Oh, 100. No, 90. I forgot. Where's the white diamond here? Because I really like to remove or fade this part. Why is not loading? Oh, because we're not adjusting the completion. Yo, -1. I think. Here, just edit this. Here. Oh, that one. That's Come on, good work. Yeah. So we could do that effects on the other timeline to reduce the reduce the lagness. Then here I will add a blending tool to make it dramatic. Screen or dope. Damn. This is dope. Tank fade in. Good work.
In the case of war with the Soviet Union,
We could add also here a zoom in soft.
in the case of war with the Soviet Union,
Yeah, that one.
the case of war with the Soviet Union,
Then
a plan was quickly developed. And was quick.
we could add a glitch here.
And in the case of war with the Soviet Union, a plan was quickly developed and was given.
Up with this again. Paste the attributes, Gaussian blur, immediately. Oh.
Developed and was given the code name Operation.
Then here we could remove this operation unthinkable. We could just copy this and add text here. Just ready that text. Just ready the text only. That will be dramatic text on this, and we will add our graphics here to make it the mark that we have effects to add here. And if
The code name Operation Unthinkable.
you will add a layer. I think that's really good.
Operation Unthinkable. Operation Unthinkable was a preemptive.
We'll add a adjustment layer here with the blur. I think that will work. Where's the other way here? Nope. This one. Operation Unthinkable.
Operation Unthinkable. Operation.
Just this. Nope. This one. Just this keyframe to the operational unthinkable. Operation Unthinkable.
Operation Unthinkable. Operation Unthinkable was a preemptory attack on the Soviets by a combined.
Then we will add a keyframe here again for this people. This one and this one. From the left, basically this, I think they need to have to be synced from left. This one from left, and this one is from from right. Then the background is from bottom.
Soviets by a combined American and British force.
Yeah, like that. Add a zoom again, this is the essential of this kind of style of video. Small detail counts. Zoom in and zoom in.
Soviets by a combined American and British force. Right? Soviets by a combined American and British force. Soviets by a combined American and British force.
Add another transition here, which is this one. This one would work.
Right after this document was released, the head of the Soviet Army ordered all Soviet. The head of the Soviet Army ordered all Soviet forces in Poland to the head of the Soviet Army
Ink pan left. So guys, yeah, praise for me. You'll finish this.
The Soviet Army ordered all Soviet forces in Poland.
Then we will add another zoom again. We'll do this from, okay, just add the zoom already. Zoom out. Soft and zoom
In Poland to regroup
from bottom, from top again here.
in Poland to regroup and prepare for defensive operations.
What's this?
Forces in Poland to regroup and prepare for defensive operations. Many people think that this was
and this, we could exit this and this also. This one on the back will have a zoom effect again. Zoom out.
prepare for defensive operations.
That's kind of fast. Zoom in effect.
Defensive operations. And prepare for defensive operations. And prepare for defensive operations.
Don't like the effect for this. This one.
For defensive operations.
Nope. Parallax, I think I could do that.
Defensive operations.
Nope. Here.
Defensive operations.
Nope. This.
Defensive operations.
Kind of fast.
Defensive operations.
Not that one. Perspective, what's this?
Defensive operations.
Nope.
Defensive operations. Defensive operations. Many people. Defensive operations. Many people. Defensive operations.
Okay, zoom in. They zoom in here.
Many people think that this was early. People think that this was early. People think that this was early evidence of spies. People think that this was early evidence of spies.
Zoom again. Zoom here and you're still with me, guys. I hope so. From bottom again, and from up.
Evidence of spies in the British invasion. Evidence of spies in the British.
Zoom. Our zoom in will be on our. So I will break down this. Is first I will zoom in the first subject, and the second subject will zoom out, and the background will be zoom out. So basically, alternate movement.
Evidence of spies in the.
So zoom in, or fast zoom in.
Evidence of spies in the British invasion.
Then fast zoom out.
Evidence of spies in the British invasion.
Then
Evidence of spies in the British invasion.
yeah.
Evidence of spies in the British intelligence service. Evidence of spies in the British intelligence service. A group.
Mm. Just the zoom out, reframing. Damn, this one is hard. Just remove this. Zoom out soft, zoom out soft. Then
Evidence of spies in the British intelligence service. A group that later became
from bottom again. From bottom and from top.
that later became known as
Zoom again. You're just spamming the zoom out and a zoom in because I like the parallax movement. This
that later became known that later became known group that later became known as the Cambridge. Let's just say as the Cambridge Five. As the Cambridge Five. That later became known as the Cambridge. Known as the Cambridge Five. That later became known as the Cambridge Five. Became known as the Cambridge Five. Needless became known as the Cambridge Five. That later became known as the Cambridge. Group that later became known as the Cambridge Five. Known as the Cambridge Five. As the Cambridge Five.
sometimes you don't need to use all of the assets. You just remove those. I really want to put this image, but I really like this also. So there's a decision making here. I really don't know what to pick, but though this picture are both awesome, very awesome. But we need to sacrifice. So now it's off.
That later became known as the Cambridge Five. Needless to
Oh my god. Why delete this or needless to say, for me, will remove this, and this, and this, because I will use A1 subtitle here. I mean, word by word subtitle. I really like the text here for a typewriter. And make it bigger. Then convert this into image. I mean to graphics. And this all.
Needless to
and add a black or color matte here. Just make this black.
needless to say,
And then shake. I think shake could work here. No, we'll see.
needless to say,
Nope, I don't want that. Glitch. That's good. Okay.
needless to say, none of this ever happened.
Then we will add here a effect of what's that? Pop. Yeah, I think pop.
Needless to say,
Nope, not that one. Forgot that effect. I think it is. Pop in.
to say, none of this ever happened.
Nope, that's very, very bad.
Needless to
pop in back here. Why is that? We need to change the anchor point. Yeah, I think that's all right.
needless to say,
You just need to copy this. Nope. Remove those.
needless to say,
Nope. Why? You know. Copy this. Paste the transform.
needless to say, none of this ever happened.
Then nest this so it will become like this.
Needless to say, none of this ever happened.
So our background here, I think a sketchbook would work here. Aeviewer. Let's go to our background. Nope, not this one. This one. I think this one could work.
Needless to say, none of this ever happened. 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 Enemy of my enemy.
So right now we will review all of this. No, we will add some text now.
Then the Allied powers.
I will add the text. The Allied power Allied power. The Allied power. So we will have a basic typography here. And I like to make this the typewriter effect because it's about a military. It's big. So this is our format text. A clean look. Remove this.
The Allied power. The Allied powers.
I don't like the stroke is harsh for
the Allied powers in World.
I'll separate this text each other. The Allied power. So I like put the Allied power
Allied powers in.
We will remove this in World War. In World War.
Allied powers in World.
From left and left and left. Then World
Allied
War.
powers in World War.
In World War. And New World War. New World War. Something dramatic. Hmm. Our creativity will pick on this.
Allied powers in World War. Allied powers in World War. World War.
Mm, It is some little bit fancy text on this.
World War II.
Nope, not this. Nope. Not that one. So in the past, I download a lot of font, many fonts. So it could help my process to browse. Yeah, word. Good word. Then the shadow, adjust the shadow in word war. Then a simple transition of word war.
The Allied powers in World War II. One powers in World War II. Once the war.
Adjust this so we could extend this underneath the next scene.
Than the Allied powers in World War II. Once the war in Europe ended in May of 1945, the glue holding Europe ended in May of
Ended in, so we will remove the year here. Ended in May 1945. I think this one. May of 1945. A type text. Then adding some stroke here, which is I think 4. Adjust this. Shadow. Add shadow also for depth. Where's the shadow? Also, download Mr. Horse. I think this is the most essential tool in the market, and it is free.
In May of 1945, the glue holding the alliance
Add a shake effect too. Oh no, I don't want
in
to
May
add
of
it.
1945, the glue holding the alliance together was gone. Holding the alliance together was gone. The threat now. The alliance together was gone. The threat now, in the eyes of the West, had gone from Nazi to Soviet domination of Europe. One of the top Americans who wanted to go to war with the Soviets was General George Patton.
I will add another text here, which is showing George Patton. Okay, we'll remove. No. Oh. Was General we will copy General George. So this type of fonts, we will copy that on our template because this is the repetitive assets that you will make. You need it. That's why I make this on the last part, because it is just, it's not major. I mean, it's not major process for me because it's just, you're just only adding text on it. Type, adding some type again here. Color black, and I think what's the shortcut for general? Shortcut. Military general. So how could I say general? think Jen. Yeah, Jen. Jen. We could shorten this into Jen. And we will make this bigger. Add age.
Was General George Patton. He said the third. It was General George Patton. He said the Third Army.
So we're finalizing the assets of this video. So our effect here we will adding a typing effect from Mr. Horse on a this one. Nope, not that one. I like to use on my essential graphics. I had a preset on that. This, the typewriting animator. So we will copy the script on that part. The army, blah, blah, blah. So I would like to end this first. Here. This type of text, you need to put that on your template. Once you're done, it will save a lot of time when you include this into your template. So you just need to edit the template of this. Not that one, regular white, and make it leafy little. So right now we're adjusting the asset, I mean the preset. We can duplicate. So adjust the animation speed to 2.
Third Army, alone with very little help and with damn few casualties, could
One. We will add the text. Just need to fix the preset, so we could just copy paste this. So what's happening right now? Yeah, actually we could edit this out on our template sequence. So yeah, don't make your workflow, optimize your workflow by doing this. And once you're editing a preset, edit that out on your template sequence. Yeah, this third army alone, blah blah blah, blah, blah. We put it down.
Army, alone with very little help and with damn few casualties.
I don't know if that's a bad word. Few casualties. We will delete the last part. Then just put that on the center. Like this.
He said the third army, alone with very little help and with damn few casualties.
Make this white.
He said the third army, alone with very little help and with damn few casualties. He said the third army, alone with very little help, could lick what is left of the.
And the second line is lick.
He said the third army, alone with very little help and with damn few casualties, could lick what is left of. Few casualties could lick what is left of the Russians in 6 weeks.
Want to make the line in center, but I don't know if this preset have a alignment setting, but I don't think we have. So we will just move the text. I think adding shake on here can help be more lively.
He said the third army, alone with very little help and with damn few casualties, could lick what is left of the Russians in 6 weeks. He said the third army, alone with very little help, could lick what is left of the Russians in 6 weeks. One other high-ranking
And fade.
Russians in 6 weeks. One other high-ranking official who was at least somewhat sympathetic to Patton's viewpoint. Sympathetic to Patton's viewpoint was Winston Churchill.
Then copy the name, which we have here earlier. Not this one. This one. We will change this into Churchill. Winston, a was. We will remove the was. I mean the Churchill. So was Churchill. Was Winston Churchill.
Was Winston Churchill.
Oh.
Was Winston Churchill. Churchill worked with Stalin, but he never.
Like to add the name of Stalin here. Like the double layer could work. Stalin. What's the name? Stalin. Stalin. Joseph Stalin, right? Yeah. I think Joseph Stalin could work because of his name is shorter, so that could work. And we get this smaller, and put that on the back.
But he never trusted Stalin. He felt that Stalin was going to threaten Europe. Churchill asked the British Chiefs of Staff Committee to come up with a plan in the case of war with the Soviet Union.
Hey.
Stalin was going to threaten Europe. Churchill asked the British Chiefs of Staff Committee to come up with a plan in the case of war with the Soviet Union. A plan was quickly developed.
On this part, be more epic. Add a what's that? Overlay of fire. Fire. Here. This one. Add a fire effect here to be more epic looking. And adjust the blending tool again here. Multiply. Yes, or softly. Softly like it's great. Then make it 40%. Add a dissolve transition here.
In the case of war with the Soviet Union, a plan was quickly developed and was given the code name Operation Untitled.
And here we can add a typing effect for a shorter text. I'm lost. Operational unthinkable. So that just this format. Oh. This one. This one will work. Yeah, this one. Make it bigger. Scale. Like this. There's that one. Operational, unthinkable. It's here. -5, I mean, to highlight more the text.
Operation Name Operation Unthinkable.
Add some shape here. Maybe add some glow. Like that. VR glow. Like this one.
Operation Unthinkable. Operation Unthinkable. Name Operation Unthinkable. Name Operation Unthinkable. Operation Unthinkable was a preemptory attack on the Soviets by a combined American and British force. Right after this document was released, the head of the Soviet army ordered
Add some overlay here with a make it older, because this is a story about the old food or old story. Make it add some scratch effect or green.
Right after this document was released, the head of the Soviet army ordered all Soviet forces in Poland to regroup and prepare for defensive operations.
This one, let's add some particles. B particles. This one, Patient, maybe let's add some screen. So that's why I really love to have this template sequence here, so it can help us out on the for other resources, so we could just copy paste this.
In Poland to regroup. In Poland to regroup. Poland to regroup and prepare. in Poland to regroup and prepare for defensive operations. Many people think that this was early evidence of spies in the British intelligence service.
This one could also add some particles too. And just screen and
Evidence of spies in the British intelligence service.
damn.
Evidence of spies in the British intelligence service, a group that later became known as the King.
We will add a effect of the blur again here.
Known as the Cambridge Five.
We will remove the Cambridge 5 here on our subtitle and copy that Cambridge 5. Remove that.
Known as the Cambridge. Known as the Cambridge.
Cambridge 5. What effect we can do here is this one. Add on your template, which is Cambridge 5. Type. Make it more cinematic. And let's add some zoom for this text to make it more dramatic.
As the Cambridge 5.
Make the animation in faster, maybe 200.
As the Cambridge 5. Known as the Cambridge 5. As the Cambridge 5.
Let's add some glitch. Glitch reveal here.
As the Cambridge 5.
Then add some zoom. Zoom. Fast zoom, I think. Zoom. Fast zoom.
As the Cambridge 5.
Zoom in. Fast zoom in.
As the Cambridge 5.
Make the zoom out the last one. What's that?
as the Cambridge 5. Needless to say, as the Cambridge 5. Needless to as the Cambridge 5. Needless to as the Cambridge 5. Needless to say, none of this ever happened.
Yeah, I think that's done. We're finished on our video.
Enemy of my enemy is my friend. And there's probably no better example of this than the Allied powers in World War II. Once the war in Europe ended in May of 19...
World War II, I think we could make it bigger. The shadow, make it more visible.
Allied powers in World War II. Once the war in Europe ended in May of 1945, the glue holding the alliance together was gone. The threat now, in the eyes of the West.
So now, I think we could add sound effects na. So we will delete some tracks here that are empty. And we just need to review again the video.
Had gone from Nazi to Soviet domination of Europe. One of the top Americans who wanted to go to war with the Soviets.
I think we need to
One of the top Americans who wanted to go to war with the Soviets was General George Patton. He said the Third Army, alone with very little help and with damn few casualties, could lick what is left of the Russians in 6 weeks. One other high-ranking official who was at least somewhat sympathetic to Patton's viewpoint was Winston Churchill. Churchill worked with Stalin, but he never trusted Stalin. He felt that Stalin was going to threaten Europe. Churchill asked the British Chiefs of Staff Committee to come up with a plan in the case of war with the Soviet Union. A plan was quickly developed and was given the code name Operation Unthinkable. Operation Unthinkable.
That's kind of harsh. I think we could add some fade here.
Operation Unthinkable was a preemptory attack on the Soviets by a combined American and British force. Right after this document was released, the head of the Soviet army ordered all Soviet forces in Poland to regroup and prepare for defensive operations. Many people think that this was early evidence of spies in the British intelligence service, a group that later became known as the Cambridge 5. Needless to say, none of this ever happened. To say, none of this ever happened. Enemy of my...
I think that's enough for the visuals. So we will now proceed on sound effects. So we just need to lock all of this, and adjust this, and for sound effects is I will import my audio files, because once I use Aeviewer, for me it is much harder compared on the project files of Premiere. So basically I will input my asset files here. Music, action, no, sound effects, and I will drag this into audio. So yes, okay, we're loading. So I think we could use the sound effects here. I don't know yet what sound we will be using here, but we need to see this. Oh my god! Damn! So for this moment, we need to save. That mini heart attack though. Heart attack. Hide all tracks. Okay. Let's start.
Enemy of
fire. Let's bring the fire. This is kind of dope though. This fire.
enemy of my enemy of my enemy is my friend. And there's probably enemy of my enemy is my friend. And there's probably
So my favorite audio here is my whoosh collection. Actually not my whoosh collection, I collect the whoosh sounds. That's not from me. I just want to clarify that. So here,
and there's probably no better example of this than the Allied powers in World War II.
So on this
One
scene, we need a war ambience. So I have that already. Yeah, so we will put that on our sounds here.
enemy of my enemy is my friend. And there's probably no better example of this than the Allied powers in World War II.
Then a riser. Where's my riser? I like this riser. So basically we could add many tracks here. I think we could add track. Nope. One more. Hide all this caption.
Enemy of my enemy is my friend. And there's probably no better example of this than the Allied powers in World War II. Once the war in Europe...
So after that riser, I'm adding some impact on the impact. This one, not that one.
2. Once the war in Europe ended in World War II. Once the war in Europe ended in May of 1945,
I'm just adding whoosh.
once the war in Europe ended in May of 1945, the glue holding the alliance together was
Here is a minimal whoosh or the hands. Take hands, we have hands. This one could do the work.
alliance together was gone. Alliance together was
And I want a lower,
alliance together was gone.
then glass break. And I like to add some impact again here.
Alliance together was gone. The threat now in the eyes gone. The threat now gone. The threat now alliance together was gone. Alliance together was gone. The threat now
And another whoosh. For the transition here.
the threat now in the eyes of
Another fire because we have a fire on our background. And adding some fade in and fade out on this.
the threat now in the eyes of
I really enjoy the sounds.
the threat now in the eyes of the West had gone from Nazi to Soviet dominance.
So here we could add the original audio. And this here also to back up the sounds.
Gone from Nazi to Soviet domination of Europe. One of the top
that would have a profound impact on the Indian.
Nope. Or a speech. Oh no, I don't like to add that anymore.
gone from Nazi to Soviet domination of Europe. One of the top Americans who wanted to go to war. One of the top Americans who wanted to go to war with the Soviets.
So we will add some whoosh sounds on here. For me, a minimal whoosh would work here. I mean minimal simple. Not be distracting sounds. Then we're using stretch fade to make it different kinds of sound with just one sound. So this can be fast in our process.
One of the top Americans who wanted to go to war with the Soviets.
Let's make this lower pitch shifter and make it lower. I think that would work.
One of the top Americans who wanted to go to war with the Soviets. One of the top Americans who wanted to go to war with the Soviets was General.
Then we will add some belt. I like that bell riser. Nope, not this. Because this bell could be a riser. What happened? Reverse this.
Wanted to go to war with the Soviets was General George Patton. Top Americans who wanted to go to war with the Soviets was General George Patton. He said the third
Keyboard. That is out. Fade in, fade out here until the typewriting's finished. And add some ambience.
who wanted to go to war with the Soviets.
War. Or this one. This one can do. Work.
It was General George Patton. He said the Third Army, alone with very little help and with damn few casualties, could lick what is left of. Alone with the Third Army, alone with very little help and with damn few casualties.
And stop the keyboard once stop it. Once the animation is finished.
Alone with very little help and with damn few casualties, could lick what is left of the Russians in 6 weeks. One other high-ranking official, who was at least somewhat sympathetic to...
Oh, this one is dangerous because you can see we don't show the peace sign, made a bad finger, so we will edit that out. It might be bad picture of him, so we need to put that peace sign. That's why we need to be attention on details in this part.
One other high-ranking official, who was at least somewhat sympathetic to Patton's viewpoint, was Winston Churchill.
Then add some whoosh sound again here. Another first.
Churchill's viewpoint was Winston Churchill. One other high-ranking official, who was at least somewhat sympathetic to Patton's viewpoint, was Winston Churchill. Churchill worked.
For this kind of text, I like to add also some minimal sound, which is this one. a small slight
was
reset.
Winston Churchill.
And here too, for General George.
It was General George Patton. He said the Third Army, alone with very little help and with damn few casualties, could lick
Then here,
Stalin, but he never.
add also that ship. This one we will add.
But he never trusted Stalin. He felt that Stalin was going to
Another bush here.
felt that Stalin was going to threaten Europe.
Not that one. This one.
Felt that Stalin was going to threaten. And Stalin was going to threaten.
Then another bush now.
Was going to threaten Europe. Churchill asked. He's somewhat sympathetic to Patton's viewpoint was Winston Churchill. Churchill worked with Stalin. Churchill worked with Stalin, but he never trusted Stalin. He felt that Stalin was going to threaten Europe. Churchill asked the British chiefs of
So basically, all movement on here, I'm just adding some small, minor sounds so I can emphasize
asked the British chiefs
the movement.
asked the British Chiefs of Staff Committee to come up with a plan in the case of war with the
Another fire, because we have a epic. Or yeah, that one. That one is fire.
with a plan in the case of war with the Soviet Union. Plan in the case of war with the plan in the case of war with the
We need to emphasize that more by adding a impact. This one will add the scene. I mean, add the feeling.
in the case of war with the Soviet in the case of war with the Soviet Union. A plan was quickly developed and was given the code name Operation Unthinkable.
Type again. Keyboard. Oh, this one. This one.
Operation Unthinkable. Operation Unthinkable. Operation Unthinkable. Operation Unthinkable.
And add some a minor exit of the text.
Operation Unthinkable was a preemptory attack on the
I think this one could add so another tip, you need to save most of the time because it can ruin your mood.
name Operation Unthinkable. Operation Unthinkable. Unthinkable. Operation
So again,
Unthinkable.
we just need to restart our Premiere again. So I hope you're learning a lot of what I'm doing, and If you know something's better way, let me know, or let the team know if there is any other faster way to make this kind of videos. But for me, this is my style, and I'm really, I think, really looking forward for more learning on this kind of field. Yes, that's why I'm still learning, and I still look on my work as this is not my best work yet. I really believe that. So bear with me. Could finish this as soon as possible because we're on the 52 mark second. Wow. So brace for the impact. Impact.
And Operation Unthinkable.
So this one, okay. I like if we move this here. This one too. Then add some riser. That's why my favorite sound effects as of now is bell. Bell is very useful for riser to make a
Was given the codename Operation Unthinkable. Operation Unthinkable. Operation.
Add some game tap again. That's dope. I really love sound effects.
Was given
At
the
first, I don't want sound effects, but once you download many sound effects,
codename Operation Unthinkable.
eh, maybe we could add some.
Codename Operation Unthinkable.
Actually, we could add some shockwave here because I have that overlay. You can see shockwave here. This one is dope. Okay. Emphasize the operational. Yeah, damn. This one. Then make it 50 or 40.
Operation Unthinkable.
This is dope.
Operation Unthinkable. Operation Unthinkable was a preemptory attack on the Soviets by a combined
Add some sound effects here again, which is a whoosh. My favorite whoosh is this whoosh version 8.
the Soviets by a combined American and British force. Right after this document was released, the head of the Soviet army ordered
This one was. We could add this. Make it as a background music.
released, the head of the Soviet army ordered all.
Then here we could also add some what we call a what's that? Halftone effect. We forgot that. Halftone. It's on a texture. Halftone, dirty halftone, white or black? I think. White. White. Make it white. This one, make this vertical, then screen, then add to your template. I like to emphasize this again. Template is very helpful for your first project on your client because you will save a lot of time and make that as a template for your destined client. Make it for better ideas also once you have some template on him.
At least the head of the Soviet army ordered all Soviet forces in Poland to regroup
And here we will add another whoosh. Whoosh, whoosh.
forces in Poland to regroup and prepare for defeat.
So here, the people of army, we could add a ambience of people murmuring. Or another battle scene. Yeah, we could do that.
The head of the Soviet army ordered all Soviet forces in Poland to regroup and prepare for defensive operations. Many people think that this was early evidence of spies in the British intelligence. Many people think that this was early evidence of
Another whoosh here. Or because it is a quite
many
for
people
me,
think
many people think so. Basically, I'm thinking of mysterious.
this was early evidence of spies in the British intelligence service. People think that this was early evidence of spies in the
Then add some whoosh here.
evidence of spies in the British intelligence service.
And I think we have some cool impact sound, which is I'll show you. I mean, impact eye. Where's the eye? Here. Yeah, that one. That one.
Evidence of spies in the British intelligence service, a group that later became known.
Another whoosh. My favorite one, whoosh.
Group that later became known as.
Then another riser, which is I'm gonna reverse this for the reveal.
Later became known as the Cambridge. Became known as the Cambridge 5. Needless to here became known as the Cambridge 5. Needless to say, none of this ever happened. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And there's
Why the movement of the guy? It's not. Zoom. More zoom. Fast zoom in.
enemy of my enemy is my friend. And there's
Or fast zoom out. So,
Enemy of my enemy is my friend. And there's probably no better example of this than the Allied powers in World War II. Once the war in Europe ended in May of 1945, the glue holding the alliance together was gone. The threat now in the friend. And there's probably no better example of this than the Allied powers in World War II. Once the war in Europe ended in May of 1945, the glue holding the alliance together was gone. The threat now in the eyes of the West. The alliance together was gone.
what?
Alliance together was gone.
What's this?
Alliance together was gone. The threat now in the eyes of the West had gone from Nazi to Soviet domination of Europe. One of the top Americans who wanted to go to war with the Soviets was General George Patton. He said the Third Army, alone with very little help and with damn few casualties, could lick what is left of the Russians in 6 weeks.
Then we could add the background effect. I think we have dark. Let's just try this one. I don't really know if it works.
Enemy of my enemy is my friend. And there's probably no better example of this than the Allied powers in...
Nope, I don't like it. Like this. Let's try.
Enemy is my friend. And there's probably no better example of this than the Allied powers in World War II. Once the war in Europe ended in May of 1945, the glue holding the alliance together. Enemy of my enemy is my friend. And there's probably no better example of this than the Allied powers in World War II. Once the war in Europe ended in May of 1945, the glue holding the alliance together was gone. The threat now in the eyes of the West had gone from Nazi to Soviet domination of Europe. One of the top Americans who wanted to go to war with the Soviets was General George Patton. He said the Third Army, alone with very little help and with damn few casualties, could lick what is left of the Russians in 6 weeks. One other high-ranking official who was at least somewhat sympathetic to Patton's viewpoint was Winston Churchill. Churchill worked with Stalin, but he never trusted Stalin. He felt that Stalin was going to threaten Europe. Churchill asked the British... He felt that Stalin was going to threaten Europe. Churchill asked the British... asked the British Chiefs of Staff Committee to come up with a plan in the case of war with the Soviet Union. A plan was quickly developed and was given the code name Operation Unthinkable. Operation Unthinkable was a preemptory attack on the Soviets by a combined American and British force. Right after this document was released, the head of the Soviet Army ordered all Soviet forces in Poland to regroup and prepare for defensive operations. Many people think that this was early evidence of spies in the British intelligence service, a group that later became known as the Cambridge Five.
So, my last part of this process is I will add a adjustment layer. This adjustment layer is for my final, I think, yeah, final retouch for the image. So basically, I want to add some vignette here and also to add more colors. Make it slightly saturate and make it darker. Don't know if that the feels of the client, but the story or the vibe is feels like that. It's kind of dark for me. Yeah. Then after this, I will add some vibrance, yes. Then vignette, my favorite one. Just adding vignette. Then this one, we'll extend this from here. I think overall, we just adjust minor change, a minor color correction here. I think we had an issue on this time. Because of the outline. I will re-edit that guy because kind of OC. And this one. This one. Oh, that's why. That's why. And mask this again. Yeah, that's why. Then re-edit that. Replace, let me see. So small details really factor because this is the first scene of the reel, and that's why it's very important to do that. So yes, and after that, small detail again. I will add some small detail. I will add a grain. That's some to call it cherry on the top. Grain here. We'll add some grain and scale to 90. And make this what? Overlay. Overlay or screen. Screen or multiply by screen. Hard light, nope. Soft light, soft light. Yeah, that's the green. If you can see much closer, it is just a small detail, but I think that could be more cooler if we add this green to be more I I really don't know, but I like it. So I just put it. Then our grain has a the maximum length of this, I think 30 seconds. So that's why no, I think it's 5 seconds only. That's why we need to duplicate all of this and make that, duplicate it. That one. I think that's the total work. We're finished at last.
Enemy of my enemy is my friend. And there's probably no better example of this than the Allied powers in World War II. Once the war in Europe ended in May of 1945, the glue holding the alliance together was gone. The threat now, in the eyes of the West, had gone from Nazi to Soviet domination of Europe. One of the top Americans who wanted to go to war with the Soviets was General George Patton. He said the Third Army, alone with very little help and with damn few casualties, could lick what is...
So it's getting lag, but you get the idea. So yes, we will go back to our presentation. So we're finished. We are finished on our stage 4. We added import in assets, arrange the assets, and adding effects, this is the most important video, I think, for the stages. But I think overall, that's why I divided these stages. All of those stages very important doing this kind of video to make it better or more cooler. So yes, I hope you enjoy the process.
And that concludes of our part 2 of our stage 4. Thank you for joining me here in this journey. I hope you learn a lot from this entire process. Quick tip, if your computer cannot handle some of our steps, please adapt based on your computer's capabilities. Focus more on the procedure and the flow of our workflow. I repeat, focus more on the procedure and the flow of our workflow, because this will be helpful for your editing process. Most video editing career is a fast-paced environment, so stop overthinking it. Our goal as a video editor is make it presentable for them and also for their viewers. If you found this video helpful, click the thumbs up and subscribe for more tutorials. Drop your questions or comments below. I'll do my best to answer them. Up till next time, keep refining your editing skills and your storytelling. Happy editing!